China's economy will collapse in the next 7 days. Update, it already did. The Chinese government came to light gradually over the course of the Henan province bank scam. The CCP made every manipulative move with the intention of reducing social panic, but instead of doing so, they only served to exacerbate the tension. Welcome to Cash Street, where cash is always king. I'm going to talk about what happened to Ye Mi-jian in order to show how terrifying the CCP is. Mr. Ye arrived in the city of Shenzhou on June 16, 2022, where his and his friends' deposits were frozen by several local banks. Simple was the strategy. To try to get a refund, Mr. Ye and his friends would protest outside the banks. The issue was that Mr. Ye had no idea how cruel the Chinese government was. His health code went from green to red abruptly as he left the train station. A system called the health code is supposed to tell you if you have COVID. Those who have tested negative for COVID within the last 72 hours receive the green health code. Citizens who have tested positive for COVID and require isolation receive the red health code. Despite the fact that Mr. Ye did not test positive for COVID, he still received a red code. Local officials pushed Mr. Ye to leave the area so he could be alone, despite the obvious manipulation. Mr. Ye's health code suddenly changed from red to green 2 days after being isolated in a hotel. Mr. Ye's code changed from red to green in just 2 days, despite the typical 7-day COVID isolation period. It is evident that Mr. Ye's health code was manipulated to stop his protest. Mr. Ye's experience is representative of over 1,000 bank depositors who attempted to protest despite the fact that he is only one person. The fact that this wasn't the first time that it happened made it even more terrifying. After protesting outside the bank's local headquarters in May 2022, Mr. Ye was confined to the same hotel. Last time we were taken here after we managed to stage a street protest, Mr. Ye explained. I couldn't move a single inch this time. People eventually became aware of the blatant manipulation, even though the strategy of changing the health code worked at first. In the end, 5 Chinese officials were let go. The fact that bank depositors would subsequently demonstrate once more made this a significant loss for the Chinese government. On July 10, protesters gathered at 4 rural banks with frozen deposits totaling $5.9 billion. It's understandable that the protest got a lot of national attention on social media. In light of the dissent, the public authority has chosen to repay residents who lost up to 50,000 yuan, which is about $7,500. Due to a false sense of security, the majority of citizens deposited their entire life savings. The government is supposed to insure bank deposits up to 500,000 yuan, but that insurance does not cover fraudulent schemes. The proprietor of Henan New Fortune defrauded depositors at the banks in the province of Henan. Henan New Fortune purportedly duped the banks by wrongfully removing assets and adulterating credits. Rather than loaning out cash to residents, Henan New Fortune would simply take the cash for themselves. The deposits were not eligible for government insurance because the activity was fraudulent. However, this raises the question of how citizens were supposed to be aware of the bank's involvement in the fraud. While some may argue that depositors should have conducted their own research, how are they supposed to identify the con when the con artists are literally concealing it? Depositors all over the country are rightfully skeptical of all banks as a result of the bank protest. International investors are no longer interested in investing the Chinese economy. The number of Chinese junk dollar bonds trading below 20 cents doubled from June to July. If you know that China wants to eliminate all COVID cases, that is correct. 0. The strict COVID target of 0 COVID cases set by China is still being met. 1 million Wuhan residents were locked up for shelter in place after 4 asymptomatic COVID cases were discovered recently. Concerning their objectives, the CCP has completely lost its cool. David Sachs, a venture capitalist, believes that President Xi himself is behind this hysteria. On zero coronavirus, I think this is coming straightforwardly from Xi. His policy is this. In addition, I believe that at an earlier stage of the pandemic, they were praising the response, which they perceived to be orderly and successful in controlling COVID. And they were contrasting that with the frantic response that the Western world had given. Therefore, I believe that Xi's and the CCP's credibility were damaged by the concept of eliminating COVID completely. Therefore, I believe this is coming directly from the top and is significantly affecting their economy. One of the dangers of an autocratic system, in my opinion, is that one person at the top makes decisions. If he is wrong, there isn't much of a feedback loop, and nobody can question him. Yes, precisely. Therefore, God King is undeniable. Sachs got hindered toward the end, however, he was as yet ready to spread out the unmistakable issue with the tyrant state-run administrations. When the dictator holds all the power, no one can stop the government's stupidity. President Xi may be delusional due to the CCP's decades-long success. This isn't the first time dictators have made bad decisions on their own. Sachs brings to mind the Chinese emperor who, 500 years ago, outlawed shipbuilding, which slowed progress in China in comparison to that of the West. Around 500 years ago, I believe, a Chinese emperor forbade shipbuilding and the establishment of a navy. China shut itself off from the international trade as a result, leaving it well behind the West, which then explored and conquered the New World. There is a question about whether, 1,000 years ago, Chinese culture and civilization were significantly more advanced than that of Europe or the West. However, it has since fallen behind in large part due to the unilateral decision of one emperor to effectively isolate themselves from the rest of the world. Therefore, it begs the question, does Xi's autocratic action essentially send their economy into recession? They don't appear to be taking anything away from our experience. These lockdowns were ineffective. The virus cannot be stopped. It will eventually escape. Biden contracted the virus this week, and so did I. Basically, it's out. His recent meeting with Vice President Biden posed a threat to control over Taiwan, as if President Xi could not get even more hysterical. Biden was assured by Xi that China would uphold Taiwan's national sovereignty and territorial integrity. This indicates that China is attempting to prevent foreign businesses from entering its territory. This is already having an impact on us. Jeep as of late shut its single processing plant in China after the CCP continued to slow down its business. We have been seeing over the last few years more and more political interference in the world of business in China. The CEO of Stellantis, a car conglomerate that also owns Jeep, stated, "Volkswagen and General Motors are our two major rivals in China. I would not want to be where they are. Even Chinese citizens are beginning to question whether or not they are citizens of China." Jack Ma, the former Alibaba CEO and founder, recently gave up control of Ant Group to regain his freedom. Jack Ma has recently been traveling throughout Europe rather than being confined in China. But not everyone is Jack Ma. This year, an estimated 10,000 wealthy Chinese people with $48 billion in assets plan to leave the country. This indicates that China is comparable to Russia in terms of losing its wealthiest individuals. There are approximately 15,000 high net worth individuals looking to leave Russia. Despite the numerous institutional obstacles to leaving China, this migration is taking place. The approval of the government, obtaining a visa from the other nation, and securing the paperwork are all obstacles. People's desire to leave China should not come as a surprise. The economy is weakening, which is causing the property market to fall to new lows. Do you remember Evergrande, the real estate developer with the most debts in the world? Evergrande's $300 billion debt restructuring plan was recently delayed. Even though Evergrande had to prepare for many months, sources close to bondholders say that the company hasn't even started. Evergrande simply cannot restructure its debt in any way. They can continue to sell more homes, but who will buy them? Nobody will invest if they attempt to raise funds, but more importantly, no one will purchase their brand new pre-sale homes. China not only has an excessive number of vacant homes, but the country's population is also rapidly declining. China's restriction on the number of children that people can have are the cause of the population decline. The one-child policy was implemented in 1979, limiting Chinese families to one child per household. The two-child policy was enacted in 2016 when the government realized that its population would drastically decrease. China is expected to experience a significant population decline as a result of the one-child policy, which continues to haunt its citizens to this day. China's birth rate, also known as the fertility rate, fell to just 1.15 in 2021, which was the previous year. Even Japan, which is also shrinking, needs 2.1 to maintain its population or replacement level at a lower rate than you do. Japan now has 1.3, Australia and the United States have values of 1.6 and 1.6 respectively. However, China has no immigration while we have values above 2.1. Therefore, they face a significant demographic issue. To Chamat's point, it will be something like, well, with each generation, the population shrinks by 40%. These numbers suggest that. Crazy. It is estimated that it will be less than 600 million by 2100. But if it continues to grow at this rate, how could it not even be less than that? Reporter Peter Sahan, I couldn't say whether that is correct method for articulating the name Peter Sahan or something to that effect. In any case, it's brought up that China is confronting segment breakdown in the following 10 years or somewhere in the vicinity. China is managing a few significant issues at this moment, yet every one of them will ultimately determine over the long haul in the event that the public authority play their cards accurately. Because the government is returning to a more socialist structure, which was historically been bad for economic growth, it does not appear that will be the case. At this point, there is no way to save the Chinese economy. One of the worst economic collapses in history is about to begin for China's economy. The populace may revolt against the CCP if the social unrest continues to escalate. One of the many videos on my channel that reveal China's impending demise is this one. So if you don't want to miss out on my next video about the most recent news about China, click the subscribe button. Please also click the like button if you found this video to be enjoyable. I will see you at the next meeting, and I appreciate all of your support. Thank you from Cash Street, where cash is always king.